It's very sadistic, but I really enjoy pissing people off with Yorick's damage like the ghouls and Maiden. It is by far the funnest thing in the game, in my opinion. So hello, I'm Slogdog, a Challenger YORICK one-track from US. I've played in EU and hit Challenger. I've played on NA and hit Challenger on 200 ping there. And I've been playing since Season 1. I've been Challenger for the past around seven seasons now. I've been consistently Challenger. I play Yorick because he is very unique. When I first saw him when he got released, he looked really cool. I remember seeing his old original character design before the rework, and he just looks really cool. Necromancer, I've always been into that kind of archetype in video games, but I didn't really start playing him until the rework. That's when I really got into him. That's when it started becoming fun, and then from that point on, I was just obsessed with playing him. He was weird and unique, even though he was like a rework champion at the time. Nobody played him at all. In fact, he had one of the lowest play rates, and nobody even knew what he did. So I found a lot of joy in trying to kind of shock everyone with Yorick, and that's when when I went to EUS in Season 12, where I showed everyone the Fallacy Yorick. That's like what I'm most well known for.
Yorick's good matchups are some really weird ones. They are not very common, but Singed, Ilawe and Vlad are some of Yorick's best matchups. Yorick usually has bad matchups apart from these. You wanna go of course Ult Max first, then Q Max, and then you wanna go 3 points in W and then E Max, and afterwards finishing off W. The reason is that Q is your main damage ability and it spawns your goals. Then you wanna go specifically 3 points in W, because when you put 3 points in W at level 3, it gets an extra HP towards the cage, which helps with a lot of bad matchups. In general, 2 autos is too easy to break, but 3 autos is just the perfect amount where it is kind of annoying. You don't want to max it, because maxing it doesn't give the benefit of putting points in E, because you will need the cooldown reduction to be able to chase enemies better.
The early game for Yorick is usually, it depends on how the enemy plays. So a very good example is you could be in a really easy matchup like Vlad, but regardless of how easy it may seem, if he plays aggressive, you're just gonna have to back up. But if you're in like a bad matchup, right, against the Jax, but the Jax plays really passively, then you wanna abuse it as much as possible and play as aggressively to try to just kind of pressure him. So it's very dependent on how the enemy plays. You wanna kind of figure that out first. But in general, if the enemy knows what they're doing, and if you kind of understand the matchup as well, you generally want to play safer. So you want to try stack up graves and with your Q and your passive, and then when you get 4 graves, you want to go in usually for an engage after they've made a mistake. A very common misconception is you just get 4 graves and you go in instantly. No, you want to wait until they waste an important ability or they overstep and you have a long lane to punish them in. After level 6, that's when it gets really simple. You can just put down Maiden and start poking the enemy under tower, but you gotta be careful on controlling Maiden. So you wanna not either enemy right in the face in tower, otherwise Maiden will chase them and just die. And you also want to watch out for ganks as well. Ganks in early game are really important. Yorick has no mobility, no survivability, so if he ever just gets ganked, usually you'll die. So you want to have wards up and you want to track the enemy jungle.
Yorick levels 1 to 5 is very abusable, and he is abusable because he needs to set up. One, he needs to set up graves to fight back, otherwise he just has Q and E and that's it. They are low damage and long cooldowns. And a big thing that makes him weak compared to most other top laners is that his W is a pretty much useless skill. It doesn't deal damage and it doesn't CC. You can also easily dodge it becomes much usefuler later on, but not having an extra combat skill in lane is really detrimental to his lane bully. Once he gets level 6 is when he becomes a huge lane bully. That's when his lane completely flips. Level 6 he gets Maiden, which is already poking on itself, dealing lots of damage. It also constantly spawns ghouls, which is a huge threat, because you can just spawn thrown ghouls at the enemy under tower and threaten an all-in with a lot of ghouls near you. A secret tip is when you go Hail of Blades. The reason why Hail of Blades is really good is because Profane Hydra, the active, is affected by attack speed, and Hail of Blades give you 80% increased attack speed. So if you do an auto Q Profane and then just auto a bunch afterwards, you will do a really fast combo that will surprise most people with the amount of damage you can deal with Yorick.
The mid game on Yorick is it's the hardest part of playing Yorick, because usually when you mid game is usually when you after you break the first tower, and then you just have to kind of find things to do on the map. And a really good general rule to follow is you want to do the play opposite to what your team is doing. So let's say your team is grouping top, then you want to go bot lane and pressure there. Or let's say your team is fighting a dragon, then you want to be top lane pressuring there. Another really important thing is in the mid game of Yorick, you may find yourself stuck in the side lane. You can't really push to the enemy top defending it. And in that case, you want to spend the time and priority you get clearing camps, or just trying to go for flanks to your team, or even go for TP plays. Typically though, if you get really good mechanically and you understand your damage, you can usually dive the enemy, like trying to defend you from getting past the second tower.
With Yorick, you don't want to do team fights as much. You want to split push as much as possible. And the reason why is because Yorick doesn't have strong team fight capabilities. He doesn't have CC, he doesn't have mobility. He has a bit of utility with his cage, which is really good to catch people out, but usually it's really hard to get people with cages because Yorick has no mobility and also is a bit slow and can easily be targeted down. Split pushing is a much better idea because when you are on the side lane solo someone, having Maiden and 4 ghouls is really oppressive to play against. It's basically laning against an extra champion, and also when you are in the side lane as well, Yorick is one of the fastest split pushers in the game, so you can also get towers, get in hybrids for your team, or just backdoor and end the game if you are solo.
The late game on Yorick is, it very much depends on the game. So if let's say that you're behind in the late game, then releasing Maiden is a really good idea, and joining in team fights just to make sure you don't lose the game. And releasing Maiden basically lets you kind of get pressure in a lane to shove out lanes and maybe get a TP play later to maybe backdoor something. If you're winning, closing out the game is relatively simple. You basically just want to tell your team to go around the main objective. So in this case, it'd be around Baron or Elder Dragon or Soul Point. And when you gotta ping your team to go there, then you go on the opposite side of the map. So if your team goes Baron, you go bot lane. If your team goes Dragon, you go top lane. And you kind of just want to push and pressure at the same time they're doing it. And this will kind of create a conundrum with the enemy where they either have to stop you or they have to deal with the objective that your team is getting. And regardless of whether they go for you or your team, then you're getting a good play anyways.
Although Yorick is one of the simplest champions to pick up and play, he is still regarded as one of the hardest champions in the game in terms of skill ceiling, purely because you have to learn a lot about macro to make him work. This is specifically for high elo. In low elo you can smash your head in keyboard and make him work no matter what. But really high elo, you need insane macro, much better micro mechanics than the average champion, because Yorick doesn't have any survivability, he doesn't have any mobility, so you have to think of creative ways to move, creative positioning to escape the enemy, and you are also a melee champion, so you still have to get in the face of your enemy to deal damage. And also, he is very hard to play, because understanding goals and Maiden AI is hard to master. In general, if you want to play Yorick in a very high level, you need to have a high understanding of macro and be very good mechanically.
So there's a few things that separate me from the average Yorick player. The first thing is definitely mechanically. When I watch a lot of Yorick players, they either misstep and misposition and die in really silly ways, or they underestimate the enemy champions because they don't understand what the champions do, or they just don't understand the matchup. So it's really important to look at your positioning. And another thing is you need to be mechanically good, you need to be mechanically fast, you need to be confident in the way you space, right? So a good example is against Aatrox, and when he Qs you, When Aatrox cues you, you don't want to just eat all the sweet spots. You want to step to the left, step towards him, step back, and trying to keep your movement unpredictable. Even though Yorick has no mobility, basic movement like that, basic spacing, is really, really important, and it can be hard to learn. It can be complex, but gaining experience just watching how good players move, like Boss, me, or Zuki or something, is a really good idea. Another thing that is really, really important as well, where you don't need to be mechanical, is just general macro of the game. You need to understand that every game is going to be different. Even though I said there's a general rule of you want to be opposite of the main objective and split push, you also have to adapt to the game. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you're stuck in the side end and you cannot push through him, you cannot push through a tank or something no matter what you do. Then in that case, you just got to give it up and look for another play, and that's perfectly fine, right? Or sometimes you might need to change your build completely and go team fight and pill for your team and just try go for that. There's a lot of options in League of Legends. You have the entire map to work with. Don't just tunnel on split pushing only.
No way! No way! No way! No way! No way! Please! No! FF! Wait! Q it! Q Insta! Oh! Let's go! Holy
For anyone wondering, Yorick, he's kind of ugly, he's kind of weird, I don't want to play him. Play him. He's actually a lot more fun than you'd expect. Trust me, I honestly, I never thought I'd have fun playing Yorick. The only reason I played him was he looks weird and ugly and unique. Let's try him out, and I had the most amount of fun ever. So give him a go. He's a lot more fun than you think. And if you want to ever get good at Yorick, you know who to go to, Slogdog.